I'm joined now by Christy Greenberg. She served for over a decade in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York and is the former deputy chief of the criminal division there. It's great to have you with us. So as I was saying there with Carol, despite everything we know about this is only based on Donald Trump's tweet or post, I should say, as of this moment. How does what has happened in the past 24 hours, this announcement, perhaps this call for protest, and even going back a few days, incorporating Trump's lawyer appearing on this network with my colleague Ari Melber, change, if at all, the calculation of Alvin Bragg and the grand jury, which is still meeting tomorrow or convening tomorrow?
Well, thank you for having me. I would say that as an initial matter, there's no reason to put much stock in the timing of the arrest that's put in his post. His spokesperson came out 2 hours after and said he has no direct knowledge of when any arrest will be happening. How does this affect what DA Bragg will do? I don't think it really does. I think his plans and procedures will remain in place. Certainly, he has a plan for when he will conclude his presentation to the grand jury, when he will ask the grand jury to vote on an indictment, and if an indictment is returned, then he will negotiate with the lawyers as to the timing of any voluntary surrender, the logistics and travel of that. So I don't think his plan is going to change at all. As to the procedures that are involved, certainly with a post like that, which has those tones of, January 6th and the post that Trump made prior to inciting that violence, there's certainly going to be a heightened security concern. So you would imagine that the law enforcement agencies that are involved, Secret Service, NYPD, the DA's own investigators, courtroom security officers, they are all going to be working to make sure that there is a security plan in place outside the courthouse, right, inside the courthouse, inside the courtroom. The procedures as to his processing and any potential arrest, you're not going to see handcuffs. I would be very surprised to see that happen. He's not going to be in a holding cell. There's not going to be a perp walk. I think this will be handled in a way that is extending the courtesies to a former president.
Let me ask you, just in the position that you've occupied before, if you were on the receiving end of these types of messages, these types of comments, even incorporating something that Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, said in terms of what he wants to do involving this case, would you consider all of that in its totality to be intimidation of the district attorney here?
Certainly appears to be attempts at intimidation. Part of the strategy appears to be from Trump that he wants to cast this case as a political witch hunt, and that he is seeking to rally his reporters, rally their outrage. And if you are DA Bragg, who I worked with in the U.S. Attorney's Office and I consider to be a friend, you are trying to drown out that noise, and you are really focused on making your case.
Let me ask you about the SDNY here for a moment, because it's had its own separate investigation into this Stormy Daniels case. I want to make sure I get it right, because he was charged, and infamously there was this reference to individual one, which implicated Donald Trump in that particular case. But there have since been allegations by Cohen, Michael Cohen, his lawyer, Jeffrey Berman, who was at one point the former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. I'm just curious to get your thoughts. I mean, if the Manhattan DA goes forward with this indictment, what bearing, what implication does that have on the Southern District of New York, an office that you're very familiar with?
Yes. So I will start with a disclaimer. While that case was being prosecuted while I was in the office, I had no involvement in it. So anything I'm talking about is what's been publicly reported. So it looks like that SDNY investigation, as it extends to Donald Trump, has been closed. Obviously, Michael Cohen has been convicted of 2 campaign finance violations and sentenced to 3 years for that and other offenses. As to the SDNY investigation, when Michael Cohen pled guilty, he directly implicated Donald Trump. Right. He said, I took these actions in coordination and at the direction of Donald Trump. And you're thinking, as a prosecutor watching, this is music to the prosecutor's ears. He's a potential cooperating witness. But that is not how it transpired. And essentially, Michael Cohen decided not to engage in full cooperation with SDNY. And what does that mean, full cooperation? So SDNY has a process for any potential cooperator that would walk through the door, and that involves you confess all your sins. you tell us everything you've ever done. Not just telling us about what you know about other people's wrongdoing, but tell us about what
Every
you've done.
wrongdoing you've done.
Everything you've done. And there are reasons for that. You want to assess a witness's candor. You want to assess, their credibility and really make sure they're accountable for everything that they've done. And he chose not to go that route. He was selective in what he said he would do. I'll talk about certain subjects, but not others. So he was not usable. So what was SDNY's evidence then without Michael Cohen as a testifying witness? Well, we don't have complete visibility into that, but we do know about certain public evidence that has come to light. There's an audio recording where that audio recording is pretty incriminating. You have Donald Trump and Michael Cohen talking about the payments, the amount of the payments, $150,000 to Ms. McDougal. You have them talking about whether it's cash or a check, how it's going to happen, whether it's going to go through a shell company, Alan Weisselberg being involved. And then the timing of that audio recording is key. It's leading up to the election. And even before the discussion of the hush money payment, there is discussion about other matters that they want to keep under wraps before the election. And that's really critical.
I was going to say, and that's important to keep that context that this was all happening in the middle of a political environment. And that's why I think it even has that heightened scrutiny on it and that spotlight on it. Christy Greenberg, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time and your insights.
Great. Thank you for having me.